Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again. We're now going to talk about anime now and do a full-on season review of Demon Slayer, which recently debuted on Netflix, and I've just managed now to catch up with all of the entire season, so I will now do an overall review and give my overall thoughts and feelings of this. Now, most of you within fandom may know already what Demon Slayer is, but just in case anybody who doesn't know, this is an anime that was based on the massively successful manga series created by Koyugo Gotoge, and it ran from 2016 to 2010. Now, this anime or manga series has currently been one of the most best-selling manga series, selling over 150 million copies. The anime series itself has proven to be very huge and popular, debuting in April 2019 and consisting of 26 episodes. Season 2 of the anime is due to premiere sometime in 2021. Now, there will be spoilers throughout this review of Demon Slayer Season 1, so if you haven't caught up with all the episodes yet, I advise you maybe to stop watching now, go away, catch up with all the episodes that you can catch on Netflix, and then come back to this overall review. So the setup and story of Demon Slayer is that we are set in a warrior era period within Japan, and we follow the main protagonist of the story, Tanjiro Kamado. The current world has people fearful of the emergence of demons who are former humans who have sold their humanity in exchange for abilities such as super strength and magic, and they constantly feed on humans in order to survive. Living with his family in the mountains, Tanjiro ventures out one day to get supplies, but he's horrified to come back to find his family has been slaughtered by a demon, and only his sister Nukuko has managed to survive, but she has been transformed into a demon, but not completely, so she still has retained some sense of her soul. Traumatized and yet still determined, Tanjiro begins a quest to cure his sister, and later on he encounters a demon slayer who recruits him to train under the Demon Slayer Corps, who have been training and tracking down demons for centuries. Over the course of the story, Tanjiro develops his skills, coming across numerous amounts of demons while at the same time looking to cure his sister. Now, Demon Slayer has probably been the most hoped anime, certainly within the last year to 2 years. Now, this is following, of course, majorly successful titles such as Attack on Titan, One Punch Man, and My Hero Academia. So Demon Slayer is really the next in the line of much hyped up animes that have developed huge amounts of online followings and fandoms. Now, overall, I think this is a decent anime. I think it started off strong, but it steadily loses and becomes less interesting and actually descends into becoming more generic and lackluster towards the end of its run. We start off things very well when we see Tanjiro's story, we empathise with him throughout his ordeal, we spend a couple of episodes, we see him training and trying to master his skills as a demon slayer, and this is good. This is very good development with the hero. We're not starting him off as a flawless character. We get some decent character progression, and there are compelling themes here of revenge and training and wanting to strive to rescue his sister. So I think overall these are good themes to start off any series in particular, and I think certainly within the first 3 to 4 episodes it does a good job in establishing the hero and building these stories nicely. Now, no doubt about it, the main hook and attraction of Demon Slayer is its animation, which is stunning to look at. There are some very great visual techniques and framing, and they're all very lush sequences, and it's great to see, to look out on. I've very much criticised a lot of the time modern day anime, as I think the animation standard isn't the same as what we've seen in that classic era that we saw, particularly from the 80s and 90s. A lot of the times it can have this very cheap and tacky feel to it, and it almost feels like the producers are trying to shortcut that way into just churning these animes out like clockwork, and I think the animation quality suffers from that. But that's not the case with Demon Slayer. Everything on screen is very lush, very visually stunning. I like the character design, especially that of the various demons that we come across throughout each episode. Aesthetically, they have this very distinctive look and appearance about them, and it's very good to see. The fight sequences and special moves that we see exhibited by Tanjiro and the demons initially are very striking and exciting to watch. Now, with this also, we get quite an intense story, which is full of violent scenes to begin with. You know, this isn't very much of a kiddie anime. This is very strong and intense to begin with, and I liked that. It's almost elements of fantasy and almost horror, and I think in the beginning part that makes it compelling. Now, despite all of these qualities, there are some issues with Demon Slayer that I think robs it of being the truly great series that had potential to become. There are so many bad points that I've seen Demon Slayer that I really think are reminiscent a lot of what we see within modern anime. Now, this starts off as a very imaginative and fresh concept, but it quickly becomes routine as we see Tanjiro taking on different demons every single episode, but they relax any depth or characterization towards these demons, and a lot of the time they just become throwaway and disposable adversaries. So despite their costume design, if there's no real depth in terms of who these villains are, then it quickly becomes very boring to watch, and it makes the show very predictable and bland as we go throughout the various episodes. The overall plot and story also loses its focus as it shifts away from Tanjiro and his overall cause, and I think this happens around the 8th or 9th episode, where we get the emergence of two very supporting characters in terms of Inosuke and Zenitsu. Now, I know when looking at the overall reviews and reactions to Demon Slayer, these two are actually deemed the most popular within the Demon Slayer anime, but for me, I found them the most frustrating. Both of them are very kind of shouty, very whiny, particularly Zenitsu. He's always crying and complacent a lot, and it drains away a lot of the energy and the verve that we had experienced in the first couple of episodes throughout this anime. And again, it's very typical of what I've seen a lot with recent series. Even Tanjiro himself, you know, he's the main lead character, he becomes less favourable and interesting throughout the series. He has that same whiny tone that we saw with Eren, if you remember, from Attack on Titan, especially if you go by the season 1. Again, very similar, that we have these protagonists, they're very complacent, they're always crying and shouting and complaining about their feelings, not feeling that they're good enough to take on the various roles and tasks, and it just makes him less appealing of a character to watch. And tonally, as I said before, this should have been a far more intense and gothic horror show, but it just descends into the typical action adventure where any suspense or tension is eroded away by the typical action beats that we see throughout modern anime. And I also have to criticise the musical score itself. It just lacks that certain atmospheric tone. It just feels very that generic sound again, and as we go through various episodes, everything is just dialed up to 11 in terms of the musical score, the editing, the characters. As I mentioned before, everything is just shouty and amplified, and it just becomes noisy, and it just, after a while, I lost interest a lot in the episodes, and it was a real struggle to get through the entire 26 episodes. And I think 26 episodes was way too long. The story just didn't merit enough to warrant 26 episodes. As I mentioned before, the story really loses its compelling edge as we shift away from Tanjiro, and even when he comes back later on throughout the series, the interest for me had dissipated. And I think as well, we didn't really have an ongoing antagonist throughout the series. We had something, I think it's around about the 6th or 7th episode, and he comes across as much more of a vampire like villain, but then he's kind of dealt away with, and we get more enemies throughout the end of the series. But again, the story just drifts away as we focus a bit more on the supporting characters once again, and they don't seem as critical, as interesting, and the story loses a lot of the momentum that it had throughout the series. So sadly, as we go through the series, it just becomes less interesting, more generic, more action and more repetitive, and unfortunately it encompasses a lot of those very traits that what we see with modern anime, and what I find very frustrating throughout. And I just wish it had adopted a lot more of a much more of a consistent tone and a much more of an intense tone within its storytelling, and I think we could have had something truly special. So if I had to give a score for Demon Slayer, the season 1, I would give it overall a 6.2 out of 10. Like I said, it started off very strongly, very stunning animation, very stunning visual techniques, and initially had a very compelling edge to it, but as the episodes went on, it sadly loses its way and becomes very generic and very predictable and very boring, I would say, as it comes towards its final episodes. But we will wait and see what happens with season 2. Hopefully they can build on the characterization and actually give us a more compelling antagonist to give it a much more of a compelling feel throughout the show. So those are my thoughts and feelings on Demon Slayer. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As I've mentioned throughout my anime playlists of reviews, I will try and review a lot more up-to-date and modern anime, as well as continue to produce reviews for the more classic old school style animes, particularly from the 80s and 90s, my favorite era of anime, but I will also provide more new titles and releases as they come, and give you more commentary on where I feel modern anime is going. So those are my thoughts on Demon Slayer Season 1. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please hit and like those subscribe buttons and notifications so I can provide more content and reviews like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.